There's Just Something About Kansas City is brought to you by the generosity of our friends with the Haverty family, the Illig family, the Kearney Warnell Foundation, UMB Bank trustee, the Sherman family, the Cockrell family, Kansas City Orthopedic Institute, Don and Mary Doherty, and the Bergman family. Thank you.
Folks, welcome once again to There's Just Something About Kansas City, where we talk about the people, places, and things that make this city such a great place to live. Of course, you can get this on anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, etc. Don't forget to like, listen, and subscribe. And today, sitting across the table from me, the one and only Sean Putney from the Kansas City Zoo and Aquarium, one of the great zoos in America. And Sean, it's really great to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Frank. I appreciate it. I feel honored to be here.
Yeah, no, we'll have fun. We have something, well, semi in common, okay? You're born and raised in Meadville, Pennsylvania, correct?
I am.
Okay, and I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not too far away. I'm sure from Meadville you visited the Pittsburgh Zoo.
Both of my grandparents, Penn Hills for one grandparent set, and the other one was Vandergrift. So you probably are familiar with them.
Yeah, you're right. I was a Point Breeze kid, a breezer,
as
they used to call us back in the day. And we used to spend at least one weekend a summer. We had neighbors across the street from us, the Boyle family, and we spent at least one weekend a summer, maybe more, but I was very young, at Conneaut Lake.
Conneaut Lake Park. I knew you were going to say that.
Conneaut Lake Park, right there, buddy. So we go back a little ways from Pennsylvania, but your journey was very, very interesting. Of course, you graduated from Meadville High School, and were you already interested in this world that you're in now,
biological realm,
yeah.
When I was growing up, I was big into sports, played hockey, baseball, football, but in free time, whenever we weren't playing sports, we would go out in the woods. We'd go down to the lake, to the streams, and explore. So and growing up, I always had pets too. So anything I get my hands on to kind of see how they operated. I've always been into the biological realm, yes.
Yeah, so you're graduating high school, and now you're thinking about college. I mean, you could have gone to Hawaii, you could have gone to Florida, you could have gone to California, you could have gone to Washington, Oregon, you could have gone anywhere. You end up Bowling Green in Ohio, right smack dab in the middle of the country, pretty far away from any of the coast.
Right.
What was the decision?
So originally, I was going into school in pre-physical therapy. That was one of the only schools that provided it. And I quickly realized that after spending some time in hospitals that I just wasn't cut out for that. So I still knew that I wanted to do something in the biological realm. And Bowling Green, even though it's way far away from the coast, had an amazing marine biology program. Our professor there, Cindy Stong, who unfortunately just passed away, had a great program. And she supplied, at one point in time, all sorts of people that fed into the aquarium and the zoo world. Mm-hmm. So even though we were landlocked, it was a great experience, and we had a marine biology lab that we were able to utilize our skills and hone our skills to prepare us for the real world.
Yeah, and so now you're going to graduate, and now all of a sudden you are going to end up by the water. But what was your journey to Catalina Island off the coast of Southern California? Was that your very first job?
It was.
Oh my God.
Well, my very first job outside of school, because I literally typed out, and at that point in time, you were typing out the resumes and cover letters. I sent my resume to 200 zoos and aquariums across North America, so not just the United States, and I could not land a job. So just like a lot of other folks out of school, I was roofing houses and parking cars at the fair. And
there you go.
But I was very lucky to get a job on Catalina at the Catalina Island Marine Institute, where my primary job during the school year was to teach kids about oceanography and marine biology, island ecology, all of the ologies. And in the summer, we taught kids how to skin dive and scuba dive. And I did that for 2 years, have super fond memories. In fact, I just took our family back there 2 years ago to see that for the first time in 30 years. And it really hasn't changed much. It's kind of one of those things that just stays the same throughout history. But we had a great time. But after a couple of years, my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, was getting a little bit of island fever and wanted to get back to reality. And that's when we moved to Omaha.
This is great. You go from Catalina Island off the coast of Los Angeles, and again, we got San Diego, and we've got Santa Cruz, and got San Francisco, and Portland, and you've got Seattle, and you end up at in Omaha. So the transition, and I can imagine, because was there a whole lot to do outside of work on Catalina Island? I mean, you could still have a lot of recreation type things, but other things to do?
Well, a lot of it revolved around just being outside.
Right.
We had, I think, 2 TVs in the entire camp, so we were pretty isolated. And we didn't live in Avalon, which was the central, the hub.
Yeah. Right. That's the hub.
But the rest of the island was pretty much desolate, and you lived in camps. There were a few camps around the island. And so if you're going to do something, it was usually something out in nature, whether it be going out and swimming or snorkeling or scuba diving or hiking. We played a lot of volleyball, just fun things with the other folks that lived on the camp. And there were probably around 30 of us that lived there during the regular season, more in the summertime, but we were a very close, tight-knit group. Didn't get paid much. I think I got paid when I first started $40 a day, but we got room and board, so you didn't have to worry about that. The only real thing we had to pay for was, at that point in time, you had to pay for long-distance telephone calls.
Yeah.
But great time, great memories.
Yeah, $200 a week.
Yeah, right.
Wow, that's just that's amazing. Okay, so now you're deciding it's time to move on, from here. And so, again, you probably sent out a lot of applications, a lot of places. How did it end up? You end up in Omaha, which is one of the great zoos in the country.
Well, I have a story that would probably last 3 podcasts for that. But the reality was, we did have some choices, and we really liked the possibility of going back to the Midwest atmosphere. We weren't quite ready to have kids, but we were looking down that road, and where did we want to raise the kids? Was it in California? Southern Cal wasn't necessarily a place that we wanted to raise the kids, and Omaha was, we thought, of the choices that we had, was the best choice to make. And we loved Omaha. The zoo up there was great to work at, and we stayed there for 13 years, and it was the right choice. So glad we made it.
Yeah, were you? I'm sure you were well aware of the Henry Doorly Zoo's reputation in the country at that time. Were you surprised at why Omaha? Why is this zoo such a great zoo, and it's in Omaha, Nebraska?
Yeah. Well, back then, this is in the early 90s, you didn't have cell phones that you could use and just Google things and figure out. So you're relying on triptych information and trying to look up as much information as you could and get that via mail sometimes. But so it was limited, but I did go for a trip there, and they were building their aquarium at the time, and I thought that the prospect of that was high, even though, you say Omaha. In fact, I had an uncle who lived in Los Angeles, and he questioned my sanity. He's like, Omaha, what are you doing? Why are you going there? And I said, well, the zoo looks amazing. And at the time, they had less than 1 million people that were attending each year, but the city and the surrounding community really supported the zoo, and saw that during the 13 years that I was there. Yeah,
right. And your job there was, you're a curator, right, at that time?
Well, I started off as an aquarist. So I started taking care of fish and invertebrates at the aquarium. And then I kind of grew feathers and fur as my career went on, and started overseeing a few other places there. And
the birds and the bears.
Right. I started at the aquarium, worked my way up to a supervisor and a curator. And once I became a curator, I started having other things of responsibility that roamed from the Desert Dome and the Kingdoms of the Night to the petting zoo. It was, at one point in time, I was even in charge of graphics and security. So, which, it helps to round people out, or at least myself out, in my history. And really, I look back on it, I think I'm happy. At the time, I wasn't necessarily happy about going outside of the animal realm of things or responsibility, but it really rounded me as a person to get me to the place where I'm at today. So I know all aspects of the zoo.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of CEOs and stuff, they'll tell you start in on the loading ramp somewhere, or driving the tractor trailer, doing something like that, and then moving your way up the company is the best way to do it, because you've touched all the bases inside of that company, and you're much better prepared for any kind of leadership role that you will get in the future.
I'm in total agreement with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you spent 13 years there, a long time to spend there. Was there any thought of you becoming a director there, or did you see that as sort of a dead end there, and you decided you had to move on to Kansas City at that point?
At that point in time, I wasn't even thinking about being a director. I was, however, looking at some point in time moving up in the animal department and the animal realm. And there were a couple of folks who had been there for 30 years and they weren't going anywhere. So you start looking around at potential moves. And we still liked the Midwest. We didn't want to move outside the Midwest. And my previous boss, the assistant director up in Omaha when I first started, was Randy Wistoff.
Yep.
And he moved down to Kansas City in 2003. And it's funny because he pulled a letter out of, when he retired, he pulled a letter out of his drawer and showed it to me. I didn't even remember it at the time, but he asked me to come down in 2005, and I declined because it just wasn't the right time for our family. Right. And he gets a chuckle out of the fact that I told him no the first time.
I think that's pretty good too. But then you were very familiar, being in Omaha that long, you're very familiar with the Kansas City Zoo and exactly what they were doing. And you talked about he called you down in 2005. And for folks who don't know, the Kansas City Zoo, the germ, the seed of it was way back in 1907. Yeah. The Zoological Society decided we want to have a world-class zoo here, or zoological and botanical gardens here. The zoo didn't open until 2 years later in 1909, right. Which was, or 1907. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, it was 1909. And from that point on, that zoo really sort of took off. But when Randy called you, to come down in 2005. It was shortly after 2002 when the zoo transitioned to private nonprofit with Friends of the Zoo. And I think that was, there was tremendous strides being made from 1907 all the way through that period of time. But that is when the Kansas City Zoo really took off, didn't it?
I think we have, and obviously there are many, many key points in the zoo's history, but I think that was certainly one of them, the turning point of it's still owned. All the property, everything that's on the land is still owned by the city. Right. But having it run and operated by folks that know the zoo realm more, I think was a huge help to us. And also it helped in fundraising as well, that you have a nonprofit organization. It helps when you're out there looking for people to believe in what you're doing and help with the process. And oftentimes that's more difficult when you have a city or state or county-owned facility.
Yeah, so when did you finally say yes to Randy?
It was 2007, so a couple of years later, he convinced me to come down. And still at the time, even though it was a turning point when the zoo became a nonprofit organization, run by a nonprofit organization, it still took us some time to get things turned around. At that point in time, there were still only about 430,000 people visiting the zoo. And you compare that with today. Last year was our best year ever at 1.27 million people visiting. So almost 3 times as many people now as there were back then. And so that was probably the biggest reason why I came down, is because I saw so much potential. And the land that the zoo sits on, 200 acres, there's so much that can be done and has been done and will be done. And so I was really excited about the move, but it takes time to continue to make a world-class zoo and continue to make it better and better every year.
Yeah, because you can't just end up dropping. I know at one time you said there was, I think at one time there were, when they first opened the zoo, I think back then, what do I have here? They had monkeys, they had lions, and they had one lone wolf. That's basically all they had at the Kansas City Zoo.
We literally had one. It was one building.
There was one building, right, back in 1909, which is incredible. And now, including the aquarium, and I know this is funny because somebody will ask you, well, how many animals do you have at the zoo? And you give them this 10,000 animals at the zoo. Everybody goes, wait a minute, I've been to the zoo.
Yeah.
There aren't 10,000 animals. But when you bring in the aquarium, you're also counting not just the fish that are swimming around there, but also the coral that is sitting in the bottom of the aquarium.
Yeah, you think about invertebrates, and everybody thinks when you're counting numbers, you think something like elephants. It's real easy to count elephants or bigger animals.
Or giraffes.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit more difficult. So that number is ever changing, and it's more of a guesstimate than it is exact.
Yeah.
Because it is corals. It is hard to count.
Yeah.
Invertebrates or anemones that are splitting all the time. Schooling fish. There are additions, there are subtractions, but it's approximately 10,000.
Yeah, right. Animals do reproduce, and they also die.
Right.
So
right.
it is a moving type population. One of the big moves out there before the aquarium and before you've gotten to the 1.27 million was the IMAX. The Sprint IMAX theater there was a huge addition and really a big draw for the public at that time when they put the IMAX in.
Yeah, it was kind of it was one of those things, and that was a little bit before my time.
Yes, it was.
But IMAX were huge all over the country, and they continue to provide a spectacular way for people to enjoy sometimes specialty movies, sometimes movies that you can just see in a bigger format. And they were huge in the 90s, and everybody was adding them. But what we saw at the zoo from our standpoint was when the contract came back up was we just weren't able to put the number of people in the seats. So you're paying for the number of seats that are being filled as opposed to per movie.
Yes, right. Actual attendance.
So we couldn't keep up with it. We couldn't renegotiate the contract. And so now we just utilize that for animal ambassador programs, and those are a big hit too.
Yeah, sure. And you also have cameras in the areas, in their habitats, and that is extremely popular too online. You can just go online and watch the penguins or watch the bears or watch the lions or whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah, it was amazing during COVID how many people responded to us from around the world. We had people in Brazil and Australia, and then all around the country that were thanking us for having some of those cameras available because it helped them to get through the day. We had people in the nursing field that say, that just gives me the opportunity to kind of relax and take a moment to laugh when you see penguins or a polar bear.
Yeah, right.
And so I felt we weren't intentionally doing that, but we provided a service during a really big time of need for everybody.
Yeah, right. And the Hellsbergs, of course, with the Penguin Plaza was just tremendous. That was it has been an absolutely huge hit. The elephant exhibition area, again, the giraffe area habitat is also being redone as well and brought up to date and giving them a better place to roam and for people to see them as well. And that is always the the crux when you go to the zoo. Somebody goes to the zoo and I want to see a koala bear, okay? Or I want to see this whatever. And you go and there's a habitat and well, where is it?
Yeah,
Sometimes they play hide and seek with the visitors, don't they?
It is a very fine line between having enough habitat for the animals and making sure that they have appropriate places to roam and choose. Does the animal have shade? Does it have sunlight? Does it have, if it's a digger, does it have sand or soil that it can dig in? Does it need a water habitat? All of those things are involved in how you do things. And we'll get some people who, on the exact same day, some people say, I had a wonderful time. I love how big your exhibits are. And we get comparisons to other zoos. And when I first got to the zoo, it was, well, your zoo's okay, but I like Omaha or I like St. Louis or I like the San Diego better. Now we get, oh, we love your zoo and how big it is. But on the exact same day, we'll get people who will say, oh, the exhibits are too big. I couldn't see the gorillas, or I couldn't see whatever I was looking for. So it is a very fine line. We try to make it, when we're building new exhibits, we try to include an excellent habitat for the animals to live in, but at the same time always thinking about the guest experience too, because we want people to be able to fall in love with those animals when we're at the zoo, and we hope that the animals are the hook to people being involved with conservation and education about the environment as they grow up.
Yeah, right. And also it's word of mouth too. People who visit the zoo and they're from, we're going to get the world here in 2026. People, I'm sure, are going to visit the zoo.
We hope so.
I'm sure they're going to. But just the situation that they spread the word about, boy, that Kansas City Zoo and Aquarium was just incredible.
Yeah, my marketing team hates when I say this. And they are, I just want to point out that they are an excellent team. They do a great job with how many people they have. But our number one marketing team are the people who visit the zoo. And they go back and tell their families and friends and neighbors how much they enjoy it, or at least that's what our goal is. We want people to be our number one educators of their experience. And without them, we would not have grown to 1.27 million people visiting.
It's amazing going from 450,000 to that and has been under your tenure, by the way. But when Randy Wistoff decides to retire, does he come to you right away? I think there was a nationwide search to find someone to take over the zoo, and the person was right there. Yeah,
by that time you're talking right around 2015, and he asked me the question. At that point, I was the director of the animal department at the zoo, and he asked, what are you thinking about down the road?
Yeah. Did you have any interest before he asked?
I started having a kind of a twinkle in my brain about the possibility, but until he asked me that question, I never really said, okay, I need to really start thinking about this. And when he asked me the question, I started putting more effort into it and realizing, because he took himself out of that role of picking the next director. He certainly gave me all sorts of advice and ideas, but it was up to the board and some other community members to pick the next director. And I feel very fortunate that I landed where I'm at. There was plenty of competition from outside leaders who wanted to come to Kansas City, but I'm glad they chose me.
Yeah, right. And the deal is you're so familiar with it, and they were so familiar with you. I think that's a big thing, because you can interview somebody. I don't care how many times you interview them or whatever, go back, check, background, do whatever. You just really don't know what you get until you get it, especially if they had never been a director before.
Right.
But with you, I think they knew you were under Randy's wing, so to speak, and were going to follow the progress of this zoo, try to make it bigger and better than ever at that point. Right?
Yeah, and a lot of that goes back to all of my experience back in the in the 2015 area. I had already had 25 years experience and thinking about all the things that could be done. And at that time, it was, 7 or 8 years of experience here in Kansas City. So I knew all the ins and outs. So I did feel that I was the best candidate for Kansas City. I might not have been the best candidate for the Los Angeles Zoo or Pittsburgh Zoo, but I did feel at the time that I was the best candidate. And I continue to have great people around me to make everything work.
Sure. Did you ever have any other zoos come to you and say, hey, we'd like you to consider directorship here at our zoo?
Yeah, there are a few headhunters here and there, and still are today. And just so everybody knows,
People still trying to steal you?
I turn them away.
Wait a minute. You're not supposed to do it. You say, you know what? Sometimes I think about it. Raise here, raise over here.
No, that was really never the thing. It was always about what's the best fit and where are we heading, where are other zoos heading. And I always continued to think that we still have more to build on in Kansas City and more growth, not only in just the physical facilities, but also personnel and conservation and education. Feel like there's still room for growth there. So I really like that about staying in Kansas City.
Right. And I know from your experience at the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha that the aquarium was a huge thing for them and really put them on the map in the United States as far as this is in mid-America, and they have a giant aquarium at the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha. And I think maybe when you moved here and you saw there was no aquarium here, that was probably sort of stunning for you that we did not have an aquarium. We have 200 acres of land and we don't have an aquarium here?
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done, but that had to be one of the dreams of you was the aquarium.
Well, it's another fun story, and I'll keep it short, but I call it the best.
You don't have to do that. We're in a podcast. We got all the time in the world.
The best bait and switch ever. I joke around with Randy about this all the time. In 2007, on our 10-year plan, they did have an aquarium on it. But everybody remembers that shortly after we moved down here, there was an economic crisis going on. And so that went off the board. And so I told...
That was 2008. That was the next year.
Yeah, I told Randy that, you got me down here with that shiny new nickel that you put in front of me that was going to be the aquarium, and then you just took it away. But it became reality, and it took about, 15 years later after that before we really started digging in for the aquarium. But we finally got it. I do believe it's a huge addition to what we have going on at the zoo. But, and this is the success story that Omaha had. Most people don't realize that back in the early 80s, they were a 3-season zoo. They closed down their doors in the wintertime. Mm-hmm. And again, back in the early 80s, they had a few 100,000 guests that would come through. So that change can happen relatively quickly when you look at it on a bigger picture, bigger scale, relatively quickly if you have a good plan in place and you have people that are willing to help you with funding. And that is what happened in Omaha, and I believe that's what's happening down here too. We've got plenty of things that we can work on and we continue to make better, but without a plan in place to do so, and without people that are there to help you, you'll be stagnant. And if you're stagnant, then people aren't as excited to come back every year or get family memberships every year, and then the tide goes backwards, and that's what you definitely don't want to happen.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to have less attendance at the zoo. Yeah, you're always trying to build on it year to year.
Right.
You're going to have a banner year in 2026, I'm sure. Then you're going to have to do it in 2027 after that's over.
Every year.
But you're always sort of on a 10-year rotating plan, right? You have a 10-year plan, complete that one, then you've already had an idea for the next 10 years. Yeah. So you're in the middle, I think, of a 10-year plan right about now. And where are you, and how have the goals been reached, and what can we expect to see at the end of that 10-year plan? And then talk about the 10-year plan, the next 10.
Yeah, for us...
I don't want to put any pressure on you.
No,
right,
that's
Sean.
exactly how it is. In fact, we have not added anything on to after we complete what is currently our 10-year plan. To me, you continue to build on that plan. So as opposed to having a 10-year plan and then it stops and then you build a new one,
right.
I like rolling on. But we haven't added. So our current 10-year plan takes us out to about 2032-ish. And there's a lot of exciting things. We're already in talks with architects about expanding our education building. And we are simply... our education staff has been so successful over the years that we're just out of space for kids and camps and school groups, but also for staff too. We just don't have any more room. So we're going to add on to our current education building. We hope to have that completed in 2027. In 2028, our flamingo yard and flamingo building was built back in the 60s. And just you look at things that are older and need replacement, and I'd love to have a place similar to what we're doing with giraffes. I want to have a place where people can see the flamingos all year long, and we have a better holding. And again, if it's good for the staff, it's good for the animals, it's good for our guests, that's what we're after. After that, we're hoping to add another bear species in between polar bear and orangutan. So again, we do have some spaces that are rather lengthy that you walk through the zoo and you don't see an animal. So we're trying to put an animal space in between. And people always talk about, why don't we have more bears? So we do listen to our guests too.
Yeah, and I think also it's bears are not easy. A polar bear has to have its own environment,
right?
Its own environmental building.
Yep.
For the polar bear, because it's used to being in the icy water and it's cold, and that's what that bear loves. Whereas a brown bear, I'm not sure if you get a grizzly, but a brown bear or a black bear is a little bit different, okay? Because then now we're talking hibernation when it comes wintertime and taking them out of their biological clock, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and we haven't really chosen what species yet, black, brown. We don't really know yet. We'll probably do, there are all sorts of abandoned and orphan cubs that happen every year, so that's probably
we have bears here that are running around out in the wild.
Yeah, just down by my house,
down
my
Raymore,
direction, right?
Down Raymore, you bet.
So that's probably the direction that we'll go in. After bears, we'll be looking at a much bigger project, probably not quite as expensive as the aquarium was, but all of our Tiger Trail area was built back in the 1960s too. And even though it meets all of the criteria for the animals, it just doesn't meet what they call modern zoological practices. So we've put a lot of lipstick on those exhibits over the years, but it's ready to, we'll be ready to get rid of them and again, have another indoor-outdoor type of enclosure where people can get away from the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter, enjoy the animals that will have inside-outside yards. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And then towards the end of the 10-year plan, we hope to do some more work in Africa with hippos and crocodiles. It's really cool to see hippos, and our exhibit, again, meets all the standards, but I'd love to have an underwater viewing for hippos so you can see why they call them river horses and have
see
both
them run along the bottom.
Have both the Nile hippos as well as the pygmy hippos, and then on the other end, have another croc species, maybe a Nile crocodile, so people can see a big crocodile as opposed to some of the smaller ones that we've had. So we've got an aggressive but doable 10-year plan. We're 40%, 30% through it right now, and it's gone well so far.
Yeah. How often do you then go, and how often do they come to you? How often do other CEOs and executive directors of zoos from not just around the country, maybe from around the world, get together, share ideas of how maybe they have redone their habitats in a certain way or whatever, or in the same kind of environment you are as far as as far as the weather is concerned? How often do you interact, or is there this intense competition? I'm not giving you any ideas.
Over the years, we're always in a little bit of competition. We always want to be the best, and especially those of us who are closer together. We want people that live in Maryville to come south to Kansas City
instead of north to Omaha.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But we also work really well together. We have common goals, especially conservationally, that we try to work with. And you mentioned how often we get together. Just last week, I was in Tampa. We had our annual AZA meeting, Zoos and Aquariums meeting. And we do have times where the directors, both formally and informally, get together and ask each other how we're doing and presentations about different exhibits or how they're doing things. So that's very helpful. And comparing and contrasting of how we're doing compared to everybody else.
Yeah, and being a member of the AZA is not an easy thing to become.
No. It's about as big as your notebook there, the rules and regulations that you have to follow and the standards. In fact, we go through accreditation next year. It's a 5-year you get accredited for 5 years, and then you go through a inspection, which includes actual people visiting your zoo, as well as thousands of pages of protocols and procedures that you give to them so that they can see that you're at least maintaining, hopefully exceeding the expectations that are put forth.
Right. It's just like school districts.
Yeah,
They're
that's
all
right.
accredited. It's the same deal. And they have to renew it once every 5 years in order to remain accredited. And that's important because if you lose your accreditation, then, you start to really lose any kind of impetus that you've built up.
Yeah, and it's a huge separation. There's 250, that number is not going to be exactly correct, but approximately 250 accredited zoos and aquariums, mostly in the United States, but also includes some other countries as well. And to be on that list to me is extremely important to our credibility, but as well as doing business. We want to be able to tell our guests that we are fulfilling the highest standards available and aren't compared to what are quote unquote roadside zoos.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, right.
That you don't really know the ins and outs and how well are the animals being cared for. So that to me shows that we're doing the best that we possibly can be in the zoo world.
Yeah, it's you see something like Tiger King.
Right.
I'm sure you saw Tiger King at roadside zoos, just horrific.
Yeah.
What happens in situations like that.
And I should say there are non-accredited places that are out there that are doing excellent work too, and frankly, some of them just can't afford to be in AZA.
Go through the accreditation.
Right, but we like the fact that we can say we're accredited. We are meeting the highest expectations, and hopefully Kansas City and the surrounding area is proud that the fact that we have an accredited zoo and we are caring for our animals the best we can be.
Yeah, right. And of course, Jane Goodall, who was the primatologist, and Gorillas in the Mist, as she thinks Kansas City has probably the best chimpanzee habitat in North America, which that is all important, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was a while ago, but I still consider our chimp exhibit, if not the best, one of the best in the country. If you haven't been there, it's about 3 acres. Has natural trees in there, which can sometimes lead to issues too.
Yeah, sure.
If you come by, make sure you sit there for a little bit because sometimes the chimpanzees can go on a bit of a walkabout and explore their exhibit, but they will come back and interact with the people who are visiting, and I love the fact that they have natural trees that they can climb up, and they do utilize those trees as well. So if you come by for a visit, don't just look on the ground. Look up in the trees too.
Yeah, because that's probably where they are, and they interact with the public too as well. You can actually see the expressions on their face. They can be happy that day, can be sad that day, can be angry that day.
Yeah.
They can be anything that day.
Yeah,
right?
you'll see. People are just as enriching to our animals sometimes as the things that we give them for enrichment. All sorts of people will put out on the internet. We had not too long ago a woman who had her baby and put her up against the window, and you saw one of our chimpanzees come over and look it all over and see how things were going. So it's pretty amazing how intelligent a lot of the animals are.
Yeah, and how close we are to them. You're closely related, as a matter of fact.
Right.
I mean, so it's amazing. Okay, and you talked about a little bit about your educational system. Terrific for all the schools in the Kansas City area that can come and visit the zoo and learn, not just walk from exhibit to exhibit, but also be educated along the way. And then you have the Zoomobile, which also, takes off and goes out on its own and brings the smaller animals or whatever into the schools so the kids can kids who can't get there or have an issue getting there. I think you may need more Zoomobiles.
Well, actually, we've been building the fleet over the years.
How many do you have now?
We have 6 now in total, and an amazing staff that do a great job going out there and getting the message across. So obviously, the kids love to see the animals that come to visit, but we hope that they get the message as well. And each one of those Zoomobiles have a different message that they're trying to get across. For the zoological district, which includes Clay and Jackson County, each one of those schools gets visits for free from those. We get free field trips for certain age groups from those school districts in those counties. So we've really tried to give back and make sure that, again, I go back to one of my original statements that, yes, we are a place we want people to come enjoy the animals and enjoy the time with their family while they're here. But our bigger message is about conservation and trying to preserve the animals that are out there in the wild. And hopefully people that come visit will understand our message and want to help.
And then how far out do the Zoomobiles go? How far away can a school district call you and say, hey, we'd really love to have you out here?
Well, they go into Kansas. I don't know that we've ever had anybody go up to Iowa, but probably 50-mile radius.
Okay.
They've been known to go. Now, the majority of the times where they go out, it's in the metro or around the metro area, but they go out on some longer journeys sometimes too.
Yeah, and then just contact the zoo if you want to.
Right.
If you want to have the Zoomobile come out and visit, right?
Yep.
You have other attractions, obviously, at the zoo that, Jazz Zoo has been an incredible experience. It's a great party, okay? I'll admit it. That's just a wonderful party, but it's also a great way to keep people in touch with what's going on at the zoo.
Yeah, all of our fundraisers are doing really well right now, led by Jazoo. And I'm biased, I realize, but I think it's the best party in town. If you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering how you can get tickets for it, I'm sorry to say that it's passed for this year. It's always the first Friday in June,
right?
But there's always next year. So
sure.
We'd love to have you come. This year we had the most restaurants ever. I think we had 72. Wow. We have different bands.
Yeah, come hungry.
Yeah,
whatever
right.
you do. Yeah.
So all you can eat, all you can drink. We have plenty of entertainment, and it all goes back to a great cause, our ZLF Zoo Learning Fund, as well as our conservation and helping to feed the animals, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You help to support the zoo. Yeah,
talk about the wine walk.
Yeah, that's relatively new. We started that, unfortunately, right before COVID hit, and we saw people liking it, so we were going to continue, and then COVID hit. So then we brought it back in 23, and now it's built up. We have just as many people that come to Wine Walk as they do to Jazoo. So I think we had 2,200 people at Wine Walk. So I'm a little mistaken. We had over 3,000 at Jazoo, but 2,200 at Wine Walk. And again, it goes back to our conservation programs. It's a little bit different than Jazoo because we provide different wines from throughout the region. And we also put out all of our conservation heads. So each one of our conservation projects, and we have 20, has a person who's responsible, oversees that project, and they're in a little tent of their own to help explain what's going on. So as people are drinking, they can also get educated. Hopefully they retain it.
Goes in one ear and out the other sometimes. But if you put food and alcohol in front of anybody, they're coming.
Right.
Okay,
right.
They're definitely going to join up. This is a strange question. I don't know if you can even answer this or not, or allowed to answer this or not. But how much does it cost to feed the animals in your zoo for 1 year?
So it increases every year, and especially every time you add something on, like the aquarium. When you got otters that have the most expensive taste in the world of animals, it adds even more. And penguins that go through fish like you wouldn't believe. So if you would have gone back 5 years ago, it was around $500,000. This year, by the end of the year, it's probably going to be somewhere between $750,000 and $800,000.
Wow.
And some of that's due to price increases too.
Oh, sure it is. Yeah, absolutely.
But additions mean subtractions in this case.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't even count the electricity and all the energy you have to use as well in order to maintain it. So it's an expensive project. That's why the Friends of the Zoo are good friends. Put their arm around your shoulders and go,
right.
We're with you here, folks. Yeah. It's just grow. Do you miss working, and I'm sure you see them every day, but do you miss working day to day with the animals?
Sure. I don't have nearly as many stories these days as I used to when I was working one-on-one with the animals. But It's just as much of an experience. I just gave a tour a couple of days ago, so I have just as much fun when I'm giving tours as the people that I'm touring, because I do get out from behind my desk and get back out with the animals and talk about those things and their surroundings and the zoo in general. Yeah. So yes, I do miss those days at times, and but at the same time, I feel like my role and responsibilities are helping them out and helping the employees out and helping our guests out. Right. So I'm doing what I can to make it a better place.
You said you had some great experiences, some great stories. Give us a couple. Interactions with the animals.
Oh, let's see. Usually they're very long-winded.
It's okay.
And again, so I'll tell one when I was working at another zoo. I won't say it right now, but since I've only worked at two, you can figure out which one it was. We had a lioness who we just introduced to a male, and we noticed that she had some blood that was trickling out of her mouth on occasion, and we thought she broke a tooth or something, and so we hoped that it would fix itself, and we did that for about a week, and it wasn't getting any better, so we were going to anesthetize her, take her up, and so the vets could look her over, and we did that, and it was a Sunday afternoon. It seemed to always happen on a Sunday afternoon, and so we were in the back of a pickup truck with a lioness under a blanket, and there are all sorts of people that were walking by us as we're taking her up there, get her on the table. And there were about 6 of us in the room, and including the veterinarian. Each one of us kind of had a body part that we were responsible for in case she were to happen to wake up, which never happens.
Oh, right? No,
Just as the veterinarian would put a mask on her so that she'd be breathing in more anesthesia, and about 2 minutes later, she kind of sat up on the table. And so...
Did you maintain control of your body part?
Well, my role at the time, I was on the mid-body, and my role was supposed to be to lay on her, basically. And so I did, but for those of you who have cats out there, you might remember, if you ever play with a cat's belly, the first thing they do is use their back feet to kick up.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking the back of my skull is about to be torn off here. So it wasn't funny at the time, but it's a good story now. Anyway, so obviously the veterinarian injected her with some more anesthetic, and she fell asleep, which seemed like an hour, but it was probably like a minute for that to happen. Well, we found out that at some point in time during the introduction with the male and the female, that he must have bit her, and he created a perfect hole into her larynx. And so when they put the mask over her face with the anesthesia, she was actually breathing almost like a stoma.
Right.
That she was breathing through, so she wasn't getting any of the anesthetic.
No, it's just coming in one end and going out the other.
Right. So it all explained itself, but at the time, it was very exciting. She was so out of it that none of us were probably in danger. Yeah. But fact is, you get a big animal like that, 200-pound female lioness that sits on the table and is looking at you. And that was at a time before, I think I had my first flip phone cell phone. So, of course, my favorite part of the story is I called my wife up, and, of course, now it's after hours, so I hadn't been home for dinner. And I called her up and told her what happened. I'm still pretty jittery.
Sure.
But what happened, and I got done telling her I'm going to be late and told her why, and she's like, well, if it isn't one thing, it's another. So
just sort of sloughed it off.
Right. I did not get any sympathy from her for being late.
Yeah, right. That's great. Did they ever mate?
No, they did not.
Didn't sound like a good match.
Apparently that first intro, he wasn't playing enough music for her. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite animal?
I have a couple. I get in trouble from my staff because, of course, every staff member wants you to love their animal the most. But when I was 5 years old, my grandma gave me an elephant, a wood carving of an elephant, and it was kind of our thing. So every year she'd get me a new elephant. So elephants have always been near and dear to my heart. One of the first animals that I worked with when I started my zoo career was a giant Pacific octopus. So they're also kind of in my top two. But every animal, as you get to know them more, and as the new exciting exhibit that you build, and you spend more time down there, you start to getting more accustomed to them, and they make an impression on you. So for any of my staff that are listening out there, I love your animals too. It's not just elephants and giant Pacific octopus.
They probably know that about you as well. Is there a spot in the zoo, a place where you can escape the day-to-day and just go sit and be alone for a few minutes and just sit there?
There's not just one space. Occasionally I'll try to do the undercover boss thing and just find a park bench and plop down on it and either watch the animals or watch the public, watch
listen
the
to
interaction.
What they're saying,
Listen to their explanations on how their day is going. I did that quite a bit when we opened up the aquarium. And a funny story is one of our exhibits where we have Pacific sea nettles, it is so brilliant that it does look like a green screen TV with just projections on it. And when we opened up the aquarium, I went in there and I didn't have a uniform on. I was just undercover boss, and I happened to be beside a mom and her daughter. And usually my goal is not to say anything. I'm just observing and just hearing. But when she told her daughter that that's just a green screen, honey. And I had to say something at that point. So I did mention to her, I'm like, I can assure you that those are real animals. I know they're brilliant, but those are real animals. And I had forgotten that I didn't have my uniform on. So she kind of looked at me like,
who's this creeper?
Who are you? Yeah, right. Get away from me. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking to my daughter.
I know more than you do. It's my daughter here. Yeah, that's exactly right. And finally, you're Kansas City and now you're here. I don't think you're probably going to leave anytime soon, but for you, your wife Cindy, and your two boys and your two grandkids, they're here. Everybody's ensconced in what is the Kansas City Metro. What are your thoughts about this city and for you and your family, and also how much this zoo helps to help the identity of this city?
Well, I love the city. When we moved down here from Omaha, I've always felt like there's more to do in Kansas City. I love Omaha. If you're from Omaha and you're listening, I still love Omaha. But I do feel that Kansas City has much more to offer. It's a great place to bring up a family. I am so happy that the boys were able to grow up. We live in Raymore. I felt like they had a good schooling system down there, and my grandkids love to bring them up here and show the city off to them. They live in Joplin, so they're a couple hours away. But when they come up, boy, they sure love doing stuff around the city. And it's not just at the zoo, although they think they own the zoo. They love doing it.
Well, they do when they're with you. Okay, so they can go anywhere they want and do whatever they want. Right?
There's so much to do here, whether it be with all the museums or the arts. Right across the street from the zoo, we've got Starlight. Just so many things. All the sporting teams that we have now to choose from. And even though I'm from Pennsylvania, I should note that Kansas City's always been my favorite baseball team in the American League.
Really?
Yeah. I had a Kansas City hat when I was like 7 years old. So
kidding
I'm a
me.
long-term Royals fan.
You're a long-term Royals fan,
Right.
and you were probably a Pirates fan for a period of time.
I was. Yeah. I grew up in a time where they were actually good.
Yeah.
And that has long been
So
gone.
did I. Yeah, same deal. My biggest hero in baseball was Roberto Clemente.
Yeah.
Until I got here, and then George Brett, of course,
Right,
explodes on
right.
the scene, and you just go from there. But it's great. But Sean, I appreciate your time today. Sean Putney, of course, the executive director and CEO of the Kansas City Zoo and Aquarium, and all the wonderful things that are going on there. And another reason why there's just something about Kansas City.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate you having us on, and hopefully we continue to make the city proud, and we're just one of the jewels in the crown of Kansas City.
You will. Get ready for 2026, my friend.
Absolutely.
That's it, folks. Remember, there's always something great about this city.
There's Just Something About Kansas City is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission of documenting the stories that have built our city to inspire and educate generations to come. Our work is being made possible by the generous support of local partners like you. You can help us share these stories by becoming a sponsor today. Visit somethingaboutKC.org to learn more.